If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her cunning. That's in Psalm 137, the Rivers of Babylon 1, where we're currently residing. I love that. It just stuck with me. I reached the end of the Psalms last night. I reached the great 150. And this morning I was meditating on the Psalms, and that was a phrase that I couldn't find it. I knew I'd read it in one of the recent Psalms, but I couldn't find in which one. And you know what it's like when you can't, you know it's there and you look at the Bible and you cannot see it. And so the usual recourse would be to quickly Google it, and I do that sometimes. But that's slightly cheating. I couldn't remember where he who sitteth above the circle of the earth. I knew it was in Isaiah, but I was mistaken as to where. I think it's 46, but don't quote me on that. But I couldn't find it, and I searched and I couldn't find it. Eventually I gave up and I Googled it, and up it came. But in actual fact, sometimes in those cases when I don't go to Google, which we never used to have, what you would do is just read the entire chapter. And that won't hurt you at all. In fact, it'll bless you. So, that's a case, I suppose, where Google, the search engines and everything, we can do without those things. We have our mind and our eyes. And if the Lord doesn't reveal it to you straight away, perhaps there's a reason for that. Maybe you do need to read that entire chapter. Maybe he's got another blessing for you, or a message, or a rebuke. It well may be. And the idea that my right hand would lose her cunning, it's quite a serious thing for your hand to lose its cunning, and I know it because I injured my left hand, and I was unable to use it for about 6 months, and it was healed really thanks to the excellent work of the hand unit in the local hospital. They did a very good job. And I mentioned the flat earth to the surgeon at one point. There were some good times and memorable experiences. And I'm full of thanks and praise to the health service that sorted my hand out. Not my hand out, my hand out. But it was a handout, really, because, I paid not a penny. And these are the benefits of living in a socialist sort of society, I suppose. Or maybe you could say a friendly society. It used to be called that. The church should not withhold its hand from any who are in need. I know the NHS isn't run by the church, but I'm speaking, ideally. So if your hand loses its cunning, you can just do nothing. We rely so much on the dexterity of our fingers for everything that we do, and we just don't think about it. And it was shown to me when I used to frequent my blind friend who had only had the use of one of his hands. And to see that man putting a shirt on was just, you understood how much you rely on having two hands. He had to take each button and feel it, of course, because he couldn't see it. Like the shirt, he didn't know which shirt it was, only by feel, and sometimes he got it wrong. And then he'd take the button between his teeth and work up the buttonhole and manage to, using a single hand, to connect them. I mean, if he missed a hole, that would be quite a serious thing. It was a 5-minute job. I couldn't play the guitar. That's the first thing that I realised. I couldn't roll a cigarette, which is perhaps even more serious. So I don't roll cigarettes these days, but I did at the time. When I got back from hospital, well, it wasn't a cigarette. I thought, let's just roll, a spliff and chill out. I'd been out of the house for 12 hours. I was only going out to get some strings, I think. So, let my right hand forget her cunning, if I forget thee, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the city of peace. It's our destination. I don't think of Jerusalem as a place in what is claimed to be Israel or the Holy Lands. I suppose you could say, well, on a historical basis it is, but even that we're not completely sure about it. There are several discrepancies in the description of Jerusalem and where it stands, isn't there? Because there's the 7 hills that don't seem to be around in that area. Satan is, the father of lies. If we know it from his history books, then we probably don't really know it. We only know it if we know it from the Bible, because there are no lies in the Bible. So that's an important verse, I suppose, or an interesting verse in Psalm 137. And reading Psalm 150 last night, it's got 6 verses, and the first 5 begin with the word praise. And then the final one is, let all who have breath, all things with breath, praise the Lord. Not things, something like that. So it's a psalm of praise. It's 6 verses. 6 is the number of man. And it's just praise, 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 praise. And when you look at what's going on in the world, and you might read not the newspapers but Facebook or YouTube, and you see some very, very troubling matters. He who sitteth upon the throne in Britain has made some shocking and traitorous declarations, and it grieves us. We're troubled by these things because we perceive their deeper meaning, I guess, as our rulers struggle or march on in the drive to join iron to the miry clay, and we resist it. We're not able to do that. I find that digital stuff has become increasingly incompatible with me lately, and that troubles me in my work. Anything that involves a recourse to digital means, while it worked rather well, when I first started and I was translating using Word fast, and I was one of the first computer owners because of my job. I was very pleased with it. It seemed to go very well, and then it improved and it went on to Windows, and that seemed to be okay. But at a certain point, and it's been recent, it's just become a hostile environment. And I find that with all sorts of digital stuff, because the digits, the toes, they're the last part, aren't they, of the statue in Daniel. That's where the plot fails, because they can't join iron to miry clay, and the miry clay are we believers. We're all made of clay. We're made of dust. That's what we are. And some believers, it seems, or not believers, but some people are able to be joined to iron. They have iron in the soul, as was that Sartre? They have iron in the soul, and perhaps they've got iron in the bloodstream due to medical treatments. I don't know. But some people seem to take to it more readily than others. And generally they're not believers, those that take to it. Perhaps by definition they're not believers. And the question comes up, what can we do? We need to do something. We need to resist this, steadily advancing wall of hatred that is descending upon Jerusalem and upon the brethren. And what we can do is read the Psalms aloud. That would be surely the effective solution. If we believe that the Bible has power and the Bible is true, then, Psalm 150 is exactly how we resist this wickedness. Write it upon the table of your heart, as it were, so memorize it. I don't know it by memory, but I know a few, more or less. And just produce it and utter it and long for it. And, you're producing in that way a kind of a spiritual energy that allows the Lord to pursue his holy purpose through you and through those that come into contact with you, perhaps, and will ultimately defeat this terrible wickedness that has fallen upon the land and redeem many, and perhaps remove many as well. We mustn't neglect the imprecatory psalms, although we wish for salvation for every man. But, when the heart is fixed and there's iron in the soul, it seems that there's nothing more that can be done in this regard. And so we entrust them to the Lord. I got a message from a chap in Switzerland who'd written to me earlier on in the year, or last year perhaps. And it was a great blessing because not very many people listen to my videos, and that's fine. But sometimes, it's very nice when somebody likes one or something like that, or especially shares a comment. I mean, it could be a negative comment, but I don't really seem to get any of those lately. I don't mind, people can say what they want to. So he wrote to me again yesterday, I think, or perhaps today, and he gave me his greetings and some information, and you can read the message if you listen to the video that I made a couple of days ago, or if you open it. I thought that low listenership would somewhat protect me from censors, but I have had a video removed because I mentioned, a group of people that seemed to be troublesome, or I'd said the wrong thing. I had to do a test according to Google, and I went through it. According to YouTube, I could do training in identifying hate speech, and I did it. I couldn't get the right answers, but eventually I got them all right. And so my strike will endure for another couple of months. And, I am being careful about what I say. I don't want to be prejudicial or banned. God bless this morning.